Hello there, welcome back to the Closet Historian. Today we're getting a little bit risque here, and we're going to be talking about vintage style undergarments. No, I'm not going to be stripping down and modeling these things for you today, but I just wanted to talk about some of the things that I wear or use to give my outfits a more vintage silhouette, or just to give myself, I guess, a more vintage silhouette. So let's jump right in and talk about bras. So of course, for a very long time, corsetry was how breasts were supported, but in the 1920s, when corsets had long fallen out of favor, they invented the brassiere. There were some sort of bra-like garments before that, but mostly the 20s, 30s, 40s, that's when bras became really a thing. So we haven't had them very long, but the shapes during different eras were different for how the breasts were supposed to be shaped, depending on the silhouette that was in fashion at the time. So of course in the 20s it was a much more boyish figure, sort of a flat thing, kind of was the fashion. So you can actually layer some sports bras if you really want to get that flat-chested 20s look. That's kind of the modern way to cheat that one. But for people like me who are a double D, that's just not really going to work. So I tend to wear my 1940s style bra even when I'm doing 20s looks, just because I can't get away with the flat-chested thing. I would have to do some serious binding to achieve that look, and even then I don't think it would work. But so the 20s look is much more of a streamlined flatter silhouette, and then we of course move into the 40s and 50s, and it becomes much more bullet shaped by the end of that mid-century era. And then after that, I don't know, people probably were just burning their bras in the 70s, right? But a pointier shape actually stayed in fashion for quite a long time throughout the 20th century. And it's only now, in the past like 20, 25 years, I want to say, that we have this really rounded, molded foam situation when it comes to bras. So the modern bras of today really don't give the same silhouette when worn under vintage and vintage style clothing that a more mid-century style pointier bra gives you. So it's actually, the clothes sometimes fit better and definitely look more authentic when you're wearing a more cone-shaped bra. Now, some of you may be really worried. You don't want to do the whole Madonna 80s, very pointy, take people's eye out sort of look. And I totally understand, neither do I. It definitely draws a lot of attention because people are just not used to that silhouette on a person anymore. So if you go out in a bullet bra, I feel like the pointier, the more stares you're going to get. And I feel like it's kind of unwanted attention at that point. I mean, if you really want to go for it and rock it, do it. But for me, that's a little bit too much, drawing too much of an eye, a little bit too pin-up for me, I think. So I wanted to talk about two different styles of mid-century sort of silhouetted modern lingerie that I like to wear to give me that more 40s silhouette. So the first of the two bras I want to tell you guys about today is the Bali Flower Bra. This is actually a pretty popular option amongst vintage bloggers, such as myself, and I have blogged about this option before. It's a really good in-between shape. It's not too pointy and structured, so you're not going to get some crazy looks or anything like that. It's not too Madonna. It's a more bullety shape, but without being a true bullet bra. And of course, this is an item from a company like Bali, which is not a vintage reproduction company. It's just a lingerie company. So they are making this not to be a vintage reproduction item, and therefore it's just happens to have a more 40s shape as opposed to being intended to have a vintage shape. At least they haven't come out and said ever. I don't think they're doing a vintage style bra, but it works for us vintage style gals. So this is probably my favorite undergarment item that changed the way I sort of saw silhouette with my clothes. It really helps give the correct shape underneath dresses and blouses and things like that for a mid-century sort of look, 40s and 50s thing. And then the second bra I want to recommend to you guys is the Rago Longline Bra. This again has a more vintage cup shape. It's not something I don't think that they intend to do. I think it's actually just a leftover from sort of an 80s, more of an 80s shape, which works well for the 40s and 50s. Again, this one has a little bit more separation inherent in it than I'm used to, but I still like it because of that long line. The boning in the side is really nice to really give us like a sharp, clean silhouette underneath dresses, or maybe even more lightweight fabrics and blouses, things like that. For when you really want to feel locked in and smooth, this is a really good option for that because it is more of a shapewear plus bra situation. But this is my other favorite vintage style bra. And as far as the other half of the traditional undergarment set goes, such as, underwear, panties, pants, whatever they call them in your area of the world, I just wear normal modern underwear. So we'll just, kind of gloss over this section. It's not very exciting. And then as far as hosiery goes, I know there are a lot of people out there who love a good thigh-high stocking with a garter belt and the whole shebang, but I am simply not one of them. This is one of the areas where I am much more on the modern comfort side and ease of wear as opposed to the authentic side. So I don't do the whole garter belt and stockings thing, but I do like one of the best manufacturers of backseam stockings now is actually a brand called What Katie Did, and they also make backseam pantyhose tights. And those are really, really nice, but they are because they're pantyhose, it's easy to put a run in them, and they do run on the pricier side. So I only really wear those for very special outfits because I have to take a lot of care in getting them on. I don't think they don't, as once you have them on, it's fine. It's just when, like, the moment between when they're in the package and when they're on your body, it's really easy to get runs in them. So, like any pantyhose, really, it's not necessarily specific to these ones. It's just, I find any pantyhose, I'm liable to put my hand through it at any time. So I try and be really careful with those. I do have a few pair of them, but mostly what I wear are going to be the Magic Legs fishnet backseam tights from Amazon. I believe these are like under $6 because I'm pretty sure they're a costume tight, or costume fishnets. They're not necessarily meant for everyday wear like I tend to wear them, but I do have several pairs of these, and I just ordered some more actually this morning while I was doing research to prep for this video. So yes, Magic Legs fishnets with the black back seam up the back. These are a sort of nude color, although again, nude is not really a color. So unfortunately they only come in this sort of beigey color with a black back seam, and the back seam is on the thicker side, which I know will bother some people, especially vintage purists, because they barely had black contrast back seams at all, let alone a thick black back seam like this. But I just found that these work for me, especially because I do tend to thrash pantyhose really quickly in regular hosiery. So to have a fishnet that's a little bit sturdier somehow, I feel like that works better for me. So that's what I wear most of the time. Since finding back-seamed tights or pantyhose is kind of difficult, usually I just go on Amazon or even costuming websites like around Halloween and try and stock up on things. Finding back-seamed tights, fishnets, pantyhose is more difficult. So what Katie did and then Amazon are my biggest resources for those, depending on how expensive I'm looking to go. Of course, that's a huge range between $6 and I think it's $19 or $18 a pair for the What Katie Did backseam tights, but you can choose what fits your price range and what will work for you. Those are just the ones that I wear the most. The next vintage style lingerie item I like to wear are slips. This is something that has really gone out of favor, except for being worn as outerwear these days, because people have slip dresses, which has been a thing since the 90s, where you just basically wear a silk slip as a dress. Now, of course, finding silk slips is near impossible. I don't know where you would even find a nice half length, like a knee length slip in silk. It doesn't seem to me that many people make them anymore. So nylon is going to be your best bet. They do still have options available, but they are really quite hard to find nice ones anymore. So it is actually better almost to go vintage in this area. When it comes to slips, vintage is probably going to be the best bet. You can find them from the 80s or 90s as well, which is nice because they still have the shape has stayed the same over the last 60 years pretty much. So it's harder to find them. So try maybe vintage is the best way to go. I got a few nylon slips ages and ages ago in high school at my local Savers, and those have served me super well. Again, it may feel weird to buy vintage lingerie, but you just wash them and then they're yours. It's like having a new item, especially when it's so hard to find nice vintage style slips or slips that are long enough. I don't really understand, because slips, technically, you're wearing them under maybe a sheer dress to add some modesty. So I don't really know why modern slips tend to be so short still. I want something that's knee length. Why is this so hard to find? Another vintage style shapewear item that I sort of skip is the girdle. There are modern reproductions of vintage style girdles. And then of course there is countless options for shapewear out there. Tummy smoothing, control top, all these things that we are told we must be smooth, sort of the thing. But I do have one more vintage style girdle shapewear thing, and it's actually again from Rago, and it's one of their thigh shaper waist slimming things, but it feels very much like armor, and it's very quite uncomfortable actually. So I don't wear that very often unless I need to feel super locked and loaded and armed. But most of the time I just wear Spanx, or the Target version of Spanx, the lesser priced version of Spanx. I think that we've made a lot of innovation in this particular area from the 1940s and 50s. If you've ever seen illustrations of what girdles look like in the 40s and 50s, it's pretty much, they're just corsetry. There's a lot going on, many layers, and a lot of architecture happening. And I think, the sort of woven knit things we've come up with since are much more comfortable and a better option. And again, give a super smooth line underneath clothes. So I go for Spanx or the like, pretty much. The last item in my vintage style undergarments and structure sort of arsenal are going to be my Malko Modes petticoats. I do have the Samantha style from them in both ivory and in black. I think this is the best knee length, or about just past the knee length petticoat that I have seen or tried. Basically, the ones on Amazon, you can find them for a lot cheaper, but they definitely are, you get what you pay for. They're going to be a lot scratchier. These ones are super soft, very flouncy and full, and I just really like the Malko Mode Samantha, so give those a look if you are in the market for a petticoat. So those are the vintage style lingerie and shapewear items that I like to use in my wardrobe and my styling to give me a more vintage appropriate silhouette underneath my vintage and vintage reproduction clothing. If you guys have sources for more vintage reproduction or style lingerie, please do leave them in the comments below. I'm always looking for new brands to check out and new resources, and I'm sure everyone else will be thankful for that as well. I will leave the links to the products that I mentioned in the description. They won't be affiliate links or anything like that, so don't worry. I'm not cool enough to have that kind of thing set up, but they will be in the description for the specific products I mentioned if you guys want to go check those out. And thank you guys for tuning in today. I'll see you all again soon. Bye.